Dear listeners, audience, dear in front of your screen who are watching us for this new event that Pastor Community arranging with the leaders of their area. As you know, Pastor Community interested in technology areas as leaders and executive of these areas in especially Africa, Asia, Afro-Asia, and Middle East and Europe. But today, one of our flagship is fintech, and one of the fintech branch is Islamic Fintech, and also together with fintech perspective in general, we will review with the leaders of their areas from Oman, from Dubai, but also effective their background from Malaysia, from Pakistan, and from Egypt and Oman, and we will especially Middle East perspective, but not only effective in, as you know, Islamic finance is effective in even in America continent. There are two country, Trinidad Tobago and Suriname, dealing with very closely Islamic finance and fintechs, and as well as from Africa, let's say one example as market. 200 million about Nigeria population is number one population is Islamic. As far as I know, 33% Islamic from Africa. One of the biggest country, Africa, deal with Islamic finance as well. So upon this just entering speech, now I would like to directly give the speeches to their specialty and professionality of their areas that our speakers they will start directly Islamic finance. Let's start with Fatin Hanım, MS Fatin, Dr. Fatin from Oman, Central Financial Studies of CBFS. I am Central Business of College of Business School of Finance in Oman. She is director, and Fatin Hanım, we would like to start with you. We would like to hear about Islamic finance perspective, developments, and green finance. Shukran for your attendance and contribution from now.
Thank you so much, Brother Mustafa. I believe Islamic finance has caught the attention of many individuals who would like to understand the difference between conventional and Islamic. And I always go back to the three main principles of the differences. And throughout my discussions, I'm going to pinpoint the relation of fintech and how we can do further integration with other new emergent needs, specifically the topic today, which is green finance, and how we can leverage what's happening in the world to, move forward and, deliver maqasid al-sharia in an innovative and very creative way. So let us begin with Islamic finance itself. The main difference in these three principles is, of course, the fact that Islamic finance is based on assets. So when I go and request a loan from a bank, I am usually requested to bring an LPO of an asset that I would like to acquire, whether it's a car or it's a building. So I have to bring the proof of the asset that I would like to take it up. So Islamic banking does not allow for you to take the cash unless it is really last resort through the tawarruq, financial instrument, which is, by the way, in Oman is banned at the moment. It is not used and not encouraged by many scholars in Islamic finance. So the second difference is the Sharia screening. Islamic finance insists on halal investing and halal elements that happens whether you are in capital markets or you are in the bank itself. So they would actually check if the asset that you are requiring is considered to be halal or not. And the third difference is the unique value proposition that we're actually offering, which is the risk sharing model, in which you have other Islamic financial instruments that you are using, such as the Musharaka agreement and the Mudaraba agreement. Now, these differences, of course, I'm looking forward for my other colleagues to, dwell on the other differences that we are having on Islamic finance. But since we are talking about green finance today, I don't know, Brother Mustafa, shall I go forward and link the two, or would you like to let us discuss first on Islamic finance and move on the discussion on green finance later on how we are linking it together? Shall we listen from the other colleagues on this?
Okay, Mumkin, how you prefer. If you can, like, enter a little green finance, and we can continue with Kemal Bey, if you like.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. So to me, Islamic finance is moving into the fintech area, what we know as Islamic Fintech. So fintech has fundamentally transformed the financial services by improving efficiency and risk management, creating new opportunities and driving more inclusive society. As we seek to tackle the critical challenges posed by climate change, how can the financial industry harness green fintech to revolutionize the sustainable finance? And how should the private and public sectors collaborate in driving collective action for the common good of our planet? These are all questions that we are thinking. What is the relation between fintech and green fintech? And what is exactly the role of Islamic finance all into this? So I have done my thesis in sustainability, actually, and I feel very strongly about the two. In fact, when I have done an analysis, I have noted that over the 1,000 indicators that I have checked from sustainability indicators, none of them have contradicted the maqasid of Sharia. So the transition to the green finance to Islamic the transition from Islamic to green is actually second nature, as it is inbuilt in the systems that we have already embedded in the industry. So technology and sustainability are the key driving forces shaping the future of financial services today. There's a lot of changes happening, and I'm sure that you would notice by the amount of climate change effects that have significantly affected the world, that this is something that we need to consider and reshape, and how we can use fintech to enhance the efficiency for the whole world. Fintech in particular has great potential to be a force for good. We can bring together the power of finance and technology and help to create a more inclusive society and more sustainable planet. Take it from the word of Ravi Menon, who is the Monetary Authority Singapore Managing Director. And I consider that Singapore at the moment is really leading within this particular agenda. I'll stop at this moment, Brother Mustafa, and would like to hear from my colleagues their views on Islamic finance, green finance, and of course, the role of fintech altogether.
Thank you, Shukran Fatin Hanım. We would like to continue with Kemal Rizadi Bey. Welcome, Kemal Rizadi Bey, again, and Shukran, thank you for your contribution from now. We would like to hear from you.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mustafa and my colleagues. I think Dr. Fatin has elaborated really in depth in terms of Islamic fintech, and the connection between Islamic fintech, ESG, and so forth. I don't like to delve into so much of that, but what I would like to highlight with the Oman CMA, and probably then with my other colleagues from the other countries, in Oman itself, we have come up with the draft Sustainable and Responsible Investment Framework. We've actually done it for both bonds and also sukuk, but since we're looking at more Islamic finance, so we have actually come up with the we call it the SRI, Sustainable and Responsible Investment Framework. That's something that we've actually benchmarked with some of the international best practices, like those guidelines coming out from the International Capital Market Association, ICMA, which they have actually issued the green bond principle, social bond principle, sustainable bonds principle. All these, which is also in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We've had a look also, I think ASEAN has also actually issued their own capital market framework relating to sustainable bonds and social bonds, green bonds, and so forth. So we had a look at all those, and hence we have actually come up with our own framework. Yes, I think there was a question from Dr. Fatin. At the end, we may have lagged a bit, but I think better late than never in that sense. So it was also a question of wanting to have that demand from the market. From the CMA side, we will always come up with frameworks, but we also do not want it to be a white elephant. There were occasions where we may come up with regulation, but then the market players were not actually ready to actually do this yet. But we see the market is actually ready to actually to be involved in more ESG or SRI sukuk to be issued. And also, I'll also move on later on the crowdfunding side relating to fintech. So the main key elements which we have actually put here in our framework, meant both for the government and also for the corporate players, relates to the core components of the framework itself, which is the utilization of proceeds, the process of the project evaluation, the management of proceeds, and also the reporting. And that's the key element in any ESG or sustainable framework, in line with some of those which has been issued by some of the other institutions like ICMA, ASEAN Capital Market Framework, and so forth. So those are the key principles which we've actually embedded inside this new framework. We've actually issued it for the public for consultation, and we've gotten positive feedback, to which also I think the Oman government is looking to replicate the ESG framework and actually expected to issue one. What this does also, just to add on also from Dr. Fatin, is that with this ESG framework, or more of this green social bond sukuk which is being issued, I think it's something that we're looking to widen the investor base, especially those investors who have specific mandate investing in such green or ESG products. Yeah. So hence one of the objectives which is actually being looked at by both corporates and also by the government to issue such instruments into the market. At the same time, we are looking at this would create more investments into the country, provide some form of alternative financing for some of the corporates and also for the government. And at the end, it's in line with also Oman's Vision 2040, which is actually what we're actually proceeding on. Perhaps that's on the green finance. I don't want to dwell inside crowdfunding and fintech. Perhaps I may pass it to my other colleagues first before we go on to the next topic relating to fintech and also crowdfunding. Brother Mustafa.
Shukran. Thank you, Kemal Bey. And we would like to continue with Farooq Habib Bey on the Islamic Fintech developments. Most welcome, Farooq Bey.
Thank you so much, Brother Mustafa. It's indeed a pleasure to be speaking in this webinar, and with having this prestigious panelist is also my honor. So if we basically look at the Islamic fintech developments, I mean, they are very promising at the moment, because we are expanding in different directions. For example, like there are some blockchain and smart contract based projects which we are looking at. They are quite promising. And then we are also on the another side, we are looking at digital banks, neo banks, challenger banks, which are also coming in. For example, recently in the UK, some of the Islamic banks which are completely digital have also got licenses to operate in that jurisdiction. And other than that, we also see some crowdfunding platforms are coming in, and they are also very promising, because they are not only looking at micro, but they are trying to basically also cater for the need of medium and medium enterprises. So that is again another thing which is quite exciting. And if you look at the other side, that like crypto also is quite famous right now, and we are looking at some of the exciting Sharia compliant crypto asset projects. Other than that, like we also have seen some of the artificial intelligence based products and also NLP based project, for example, like natural language processing. So we also see that like they are quite promising. So in that sense, what I am seeing is that technology embracement is there by the Islamic finance industry, although like it is not very like I would say like aggressive, in the sense that the approach which has been taken by the overall Islamic finance industry to adopt the technology, is again something which is like an approach which is like you are following conventional side again. But because the thing is, although if you look at, for example, blockchain or a smart contract, you would see that it can basically resolve a lot of problem of the Islamic financial products. For example, Dr. Fatin has indicated about tawarruk. So for example, you know that like in tawarruk, you have sequential process is also very, very important to ensure that there is Sharia compliance of tawarruk. But again, the problem is that we haven't seen any until now. I mean, it is very difficult to see any a dedicated blockchain platform or a smart contract based platform specifically for murabaha transactions or for tawarruk transactions, which is used by institutions, financial institutions as well. But we do see some of the what do we call it, is like some groundbreaking instruments also, and the usage of technology. But I think that if we also relate it with the green financing, we are again lagging behind in that industry, because from the Sharia perspective, green is actually something which is environmental friendly and eco-friendly. That is already our religion supports. So being Sharia compliant or Islamic should have been the way to understand those products and services according to from different angles. For example, be it SRI or ESG, or even UN SDG goals, or even if we are talking about green financing. So they should, Islamic finance, the word Islamic should have been all inclusive of all this. But unfortunately now we see that, like, because of there is a separation of commercial use of Islamic finance and then the use of Islamic finance for other purposes. So we have to say that, like, okay, whether it is Islamic finance and also green finance, Islamic finance and also ethical finance, or SRI also, by the way. Although but initially, conceptually, it should have been all inclusive anyway. So, but I think that with this note, I will just wrap up, and then I will basically continue with the discussion.
Shukran, thank you, Farooq Bey. As far as I can comment that Islamic finance is very, very close and even same and accept and wish green finance, because Islam cannot accept to any damage to the dunya and environment and insan. At the end, damage of dunya means damage to the insan because of climatic change or any, or for example, blockchain. Many people knows that blockchain, Bitcoin, مثلا, work on blockchain, but Bitcoin, because of their algorithm and their system, needs many power consumption. It is not Islamic, as far as I say, yani just I can say. So, of course, blockchain as a technology can be minimized, can be technology that can minimize of this kind of algorithms, can less according to the Bitcoin, مثلا, to use in banking system.
Just if I can add something very quickly, is that I agree that Islam does not allow anything which is basically damaging to the overall society and the environment. But again, the thing is sometimes those side effects, or you can say some of the consequences, are not direct. Because of that, if you cannot create a direct link with the cause and effect, then of course, like, it's debatable from and subjective from the Sharia perspective as well. So that is basically the case and the challenge we are facing at the moment. But I think that what we really need is basically some international standards for accepting and incorporating those angles of finance into Islamic finance as well. So, like, for example, like VBI is basically a very good thing which has started. But of course, like I also need to see the implementation in different countries. Going back to like what if let's suppose that Bitcoin, again the thing is like it is heavy on energy consumption, but Bitcoin actually works on proof of work consensus algorithm. This is only one type of algorithm. Now we have more than 20 algorithms already in the crypto assets. So some and not and this is only the one. Proof of work is the only one which is basically heavily energy consumption is heavy on the energy consumption, but other algorithms are not. So again, if ye are considering to have a green and Islamic crypto asset, that is still possible. So that is not a problem.
Sure. Because of this, I mentioned algorithms of some, of course, banks. Also, alternatives has side effects, but it's of course I am not expert on this. I don't want to talk more. So I want to pass this subject to the Mohammed Rushdie Bey as our speaker from Dubai.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rushdie Bey.
Thank you, Mustafa Bey, and everybody. I'm very glad today to be here with you and with colleagues, friends, and brothers and sisters. It's very, interesting and inspiring topic. Since I think we've been talking about fintech and Islamic fintech and so on. I think we are a little bit not lagging. I'd say we're still in a nascent or in a startup area, even for our fintech. Fintech in general and worldwide is not. It's still as well, in a few years only old, and still not matured enough in our region. We're still building the normal fintech, I would say, a framework and ecosystem. Definitely green finance and anything which is as brothers and sisters talk, Islamic finance does not allow anything which has harm to the society, community, or whatever, unless something direct. But it as well, it encourages people to do the right things and the good things for the future. So I can say that update from here, from the sustainable finance in general, being in UAE had a US sustainable finance framework 21 to 23. So it was published this year, 14 years ahead. Very interesting and important part of this is Islamic finance, and this is a great thing. So Green Sukuk is part of this framework. The framework talk about all, possibilities of sustainable finance, and part of it is very important is Green Sukuk, which I think is something we've been hearing a lot about it. I think the first one was in Indonesia, 2018, and I think there is more coming up as well in the region. When it comes to fintechs, especially the fintechs and Islamic fintech, they are not working in this area yet. I think there is it will take some time to go. Maybe using platform like blockchain or whatever. I think this can help us in the energy consumption. Even some of these use cases also encourage the use of solar panels and so on, and moving the energy from one area to another area and able to sell it. So I think the technology itself is going to help to promote the green finance. Meanwhile, as I said, maybe in the next few years we'll be able to see some more fintech startups which is working mainly or have some focus in investing in projects for sustainable finance. I think it is also, let us say, it's a good area for entrepreneurship, which is if they come with something like that, I think this will be great. If you look around as well worldwide, what is the green fintech? It's not many. Maybe you can share later on the list with you guys. Worldwide, there are not many even green fintech or fintech which say working green finance. Worldwide, there are not many, either for Islamic or non-Islamic or conventional. But I believe this will be developed, soon, because there is some attention given from the world and everyone for the climate change. You can see there is a big climate change happening, and I think this is the right time for everybody, to put their efforts in really promoting this kind of green finance. That's my addition to the discussion.
Most welcome, Mohammed Bey. So let's continue as second turn. Dr. Fatih Hanım, we would like to hear from you. as second stage.
Certainly. Many interesting discussions. I agree totally with Brother Muhammad Rusty when he said we are actually at infancy stage when it comes to green fintech. In fact, the initiatives that we see are very limited. We do not see what we want actually. But coming to the point of Islamic finance, when I mention even a simple hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, وَإِمَاطَةُ الْأَذَى عَنِ الطَّرِيقِ صَدَقَةٌ, meaning even lifting the harm from the road is sadaqah. So the advantage of Islamic finance, that it has already those principles embedded within them. So actually we are in a league of our own when it comes to the implementation of the Sharia standards, the screening process that we are following. If we just complement this with a little bit care and understanding what is SDGs, what is ESGs, how can we actually implement further value addition in our screening processes. For instance, if a company or I would come requesting for a loan to build a dome or to block some benefit that the society would get out of funding me, then the funder we need to reconsider what are the consequences of these actions. What is the consequences of me funding that particular corporate or SME or company? I agree totally also with Brother Farouk when he mentioned that we don't have standards actually at the moment. In fact, what are we going to report exactly if we would like to implement? Is it GRI? Is it SASB? Do we need something like an IOFI kind of measure of reporting standards in which sustainability is embedded into it? We have to think about it from other elements. And again, when it comes to OIC countries, if I view the statistics, I mean the potential is huge in this particular market. But then are we really taking note of these statistics? When you mention, for instance, one of the speakers, apologies, I have a very short-term memory. You mentioned MSMEs. Now, MSMEs contribute up to 40% of national GDP in emerging markets and expected to contribute creation of 600 million jobs. And their main issue is always access to finance. So we need to fund them. We need to find ways to, create this real economy that Islamic finance would like us to create. And at the end of the day, if we would like to create this market, we have to think also, how does sustainability come into the picture, when we are funding these MSMEs? Because at the end of the day, we would like to have sustainable MSMEs, not in the survivalship mode. Because at the moment, most of the MSMEs in the OIC countries are in survivalship mode. By research, sustainability pays off in the long term. MSMEs think in the short term all the time. But when we provide data that, an investment, for instance, of $1 at the beginning of 1993 in evaluated portfolio of high sustainability company would have grown $22.6 by the end of by 2010, compared to 15.40 for the portfolio of a low sustainability company. So this is really relevant for the Middle East and North Africa, the MENA region. And there is potential which is huge in this market, which again, that green fintech initiatives can leverage from. There is around sustainable business models can unlock more than US $637 billion and create 12.4 million jobs across the MENA region by 2030. A statistics that is shown by research. So how much we can do to provide for this opportunity, specifically at pandemic time, specifically as we are thinking about major recession economically at these moments. We are facing dual shock, specifically at a time when we are thinking let us leverage Islamic Fintech, whereas the values are there. We just need to open them up and find ways to use certain technologies like blockchain, smart contracts. Traceability allows us to be more efficient. I do remember only at the moment one Islamic fintech, it's categorized as a banking challenger, Kestrel. They are using a mechanism to calculate the footprint, how much carbon emission I as an individual, contribute in, and how can I offset it? So it would recommend the application would recommend me to, for instance, to plant a tree. This is a wonderful, thing that we can think about. What about sadaqah? What about inclusivity? What about taking a role model? And Brother Kamal, I don't want to, put a strain on you, but let us use the Singapore example because it's a role model when it comes to, green fintech at the moment. And, the buildings, the setup, even from the airport, you will see green, elements. So it is important that we benchmark, we use role models, we use the technology efficiently. Islamic finance is set up for this. It's just meant to be. And yes, Brother Farouk, we don't have standards. Alhamdulillah, since this is the meeting of the minds, maybe we can recommend some policies in future. And I'm looking forward to hear from my other colleagues on this. But certainly, I'm happy to hear that social responsible investing is considered, that ESG credit scoring is considered. By the way, at the moment, we don't see much applications, to smooth the transition. And I look forward for a better future for the next generations to come and the grandchildren as well. So this is all a responsibility in our shoulder, and we should do it for the right causes, inshallah. I'm looking forward to hear from my colleagues on this because it matters for the future generation.
Thank you, Fasin. Sometimes listeners look at the content of the speakers and they suppose that speakers missing some points. For example, data, for example, cybersecurity, of course, AI, machine learning, KIDA. Of course, we are neglecting this kind of, for example, cybersecurity must be. Now we are talking everything that cybersecurity under the shadow of umbrella of cybersecurity. Even AI, sometimes we are neglecting AI, but we know that everyone knows that in the world AI coming. We are all use data and AI, and according to our even previous data or real-time data, AI one of the big helper of all industries. So just I wanted to add this for our listeners, and we would like to continue with Kemal Bey to hear about from you.
I think Dr. Fatin has very well articulated relating, topics about ESG, SRIs. Yes, I think from the ASEAN side, I think there are a lot of good models and benchmarks and also issuances which have actually been coming from that side of the region. I think even Malaysia issued the first sustainable sukuk that was issued recently. There was a sovereign sukuk. So I just like to touch a bit more on the crowdfunding side. I think it's also to market also to both my fellow colleagues and also whoever is actually listening on into the whole webinar. For Oman side, and I think Dr. Fatin would also be pleased, and she has been waiting for so long. We have actually come up with the crowdfunding platform framework and regulation in Oman. I think that was something that was always in the plate, but it took a while, but I think it's there. And this is both meant for whether it's a conventional or Islamic crowdfunding platform. We have actually opened it up. So in a way, the CMA will be covering everything or supervising everything from donation-based, rewards-based, equity, and also P2P. So P2P would actually be under the CMA and not the central bank side. So everything will actually be a one-stop center through the CMA. We've had a look at some of the other benchmarks with some of our other GCC countries. And I think, and also gotten feedback from some of the other international crowdfunding platforms and quite a number of actually Islamic crowdfunding platforms. I think you know them, especially in the international setting. We've had feedback from there and we've had a look at it. So I think, and we've actually posted it up for public consultation. It's still open, and Dr. Fatin, you are aware. If not, I mean, last day is on Sunday next week. But we've also gotten some feedback from some of the other international players. And one of the aspects that we were looking at is that to make it flexible so that any investor, be it within Oman or outside of Oman, can actually come in to invest, or any form of companies, irrespective whether it's in Oman or whether the project is outside of Oman, can also be put on the platform in Oman. So it's going to be more of like a global based platforms, and this was something that was received positively by the market players. I think in terms of the other aspects of it, we are quite open in terms of investors which can actually come in to invest. I do know some of our other GCC countries do not allow even retail investors. Specifically, I think Bahrain doesn't allow retail investors, so they only allow accredited investors. So we've actually quite open in it. We've actually put in some. We do not have much limitation, especially for those sophisticated investors to actually come in to invest. We are open about it, and in terms of whatever instruments that they wish to actually, or companies they wish to actually put in, we have no limitation in what kind of companies, because in even some of the other countries, there are limitations relating to what form of companies and how big the size of those companies. So this would actually capture everything, as what Dr. Fatin, you mentioned MSMEs. So in order to fill that gap, in order to provide this alternative financing for some of these players in the market to raise funding, and we do know that they find it very difficult to actually get funding, especially from the banks, especially Islamic banks, especially during this current times. So we are trying to fill in that gaps. Hopefully, then this would allow them to actually get the required funding needed for them in order to do their business, and at the same time, to provide a global platform for actually players to actually come into Oman. It is still on our website. Feel free to look at it. I think I'm opening up to anyone who's the viewers who's actually looking at it, and please give out your feedback. We're still open to it. Anything unless the other speakers wish to add, feel free.
Thank you, Kemal Bey. Any comment or ask to Kemal Bey, if anyone, please, now we can.
Yeah, I just need to ask, the crowdfunding platform will be used for like SME financing, or what is the purpose? What would be doing? Like, I know there is some crowdfunding platform which is here for real estate financing. There is other for we have some company here, peer-to-peer finance or crowdfunding finance for SMEs and so on. So I'm just trying to understand what is the regulation. Is it touching an all type of investor or financing, or?
Yes, at the moment, I mean, it's open, especially relating to equity and P2P financing. It's similar to what the DFA has also. But we'll be opening it up to global projects. So it's not limited to only projects in Oman, because we do get the feedback saying that some of these international platforms wants to come into Oman, but they want to have the volume. So we are creating that volume. So it's actually quite open and flexible. Yeah. So when you say equity, it could be all forms of companies. It doesn't necessarily to be just real estate. It could be any form of companies that is actually involved in the form of business, as long as they have some form of business plans.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shukran, Kemal Bey and Mohammed Bey. And then let's continue with Farooq Bey again. Please, Farooq Bey.
Yeah, so I just wanted to also would like to see from the regulatory perspective, because what is the progress there? Because right now in fintech adoption, Islamic fintech adoption, the biggest thing and the biggest, I would say, the breakthrough is has to come from the regulatory perspective. Like, if we can have sandboxes, and then we can also have some standards, regulations, legal framework for Islamic fintech, then of course, like this industry can prosper in an easy way at the moment. Because if you look at the technology is already very fast, and the development in the technology itself is not a problem, because it is already ahead of its time. The only thing which is now we really would like to see is the regulators coming forward and tell the people that how to use the technology in a Sharia compliant manner, number one, and number two is for the good of the whole society at the moment. Because I understand that for the regulators there is a very difficult task to balance between, on one hand, consumer protection, and on the other side, like not to kill the innovation itself. So this is, I think, that is a very serious and very big task on the regulator side. And I think that so far what they have done, even if you look at the GCC, for example, we have ADGM, DIFC here. So they are doing a very good job. And Bahrain is again a very good jurisdiction for Islamic fintech startups. So, but I think that we and Malaysia again doing pretty much well, but we need to see more jurisdictions coming forward and having an aggressive or proactive approach towards this Islamic fintech phenomena.
Can I just add to Brother Farouk? Yes, I think in Oman, yes, I think in terms of Islamic finance, we need a late starter. I mean, as you're aware, Islamic finance came into being in Oman only from 2013 onwards, especially when the establishment of the Islamic banks and the windows here in Oman. So it's only been 8 years, but having said that, and I think in terms of numbers, I think it's very commendable as compared to some of the other developed markets. I mean, Malaysia has developed over the last 40 years. And you look at when it comes to numbers, probably in terms of the Islamic capital market side, the Islamic capital market represents about 60%, of the total market. Now you look at Oman, notwithstanding the last 8 years, roughly it represents close to about 12 to 15%. Notwithstanding, for the last 8 years, I mean, since we've grown. The banking side probably also is roughly about 15 to 20% of the banking assets. But how we approach that, and I think what you have mentioned, Brother Farouk, is always a question of trying to balance between protecting, especially the smaller investors, and at the same time trying to develop the market quickly. And I think in order to catch up, there were some key aspects that we were trying to be a bit more flexible, also in order to enhance innovation. I will give you an example. In terms of issuances of sukuk, as you're aware, in Oman, we do not have any central Sharia body for the capital market side. We do have a higher Sharia authority for the banking side, which is good in order to ensure standards of instruments, especially when banks are for liquidity instruments between banks. So they did have to have certain standard products. But for the capital market side, we have actually left it up to the players to decide. We left it to their respective Sharia committees, whether from the issuer side or from the company, to decide on the fatwa. Because at the end, you are actually selling your papers to the market. However, having said that, because in Oman, we already have a standard which needs to be complied under the Islamic banking regulatory framework, that all banks needs to comply with AOFI standards, okay, then at least it has that specific standards, at least among the local banks itself. But other than that, for any company, whether they're targeting either both in Oman or outside of Oman, they are left to decide in terms of the fatwa based on their own respective Sharia committees. So in a way, we've left it flexible for them to decide, rather than having a Sharia committee for now, in order to have that catch up. And I think if you look at the history of even Malaysia, the Sharia committees especially the Central Sharia Committees, which came in both the Securities Commission Malaysia and also the Central Bank of Malaysia, came much later, 10 to 15 years down the road from the first sukuk that was issued by Shell in Malaysia. So in a way that helps to hopefully, we've seen more issuances. So at the end, you want to actually sell your papers. So who are your targeted investors? It's up to you to decide in terms of your fatwa that needs to be issued. And I think another positive aspect in Oman, which we have actually introduced, and that also tries to address some of these global issues which happens in Dubai and some other markets where people are actually some companies are actually suing back and not paying back their sukuk. We have cases like in Dubai. So what we have in Oman, and not many people are aware of that, even in AOFI, that in our own sukuk regulation, we have something where even a sukuk is required to have an annual Sharia certification to ensure that there is this annual Sharia disclosure to say it is still Sharia compliant. Okay, you have that in normal Islamic asset management, but you don't normally have that in for normal sukuk, because most of the time you issue a sukuk, the first time you issue, then the investment bank basically runs off. They disappear. And that becomes a problem whereby after 1 or 2 years down the road, depending how long the perpetuity, depending on how long the maturity period, then the question is the sukuk is actually still Sharia compliant? And that becomes an issue in some of these cases which is happening in Dubai, right? And they are trying to actually put that issue in order not to pay back the sukuk. Well, you have seen that globally. So in Oman, we have one of the key requirements. It needs to be annually certified that it is still Sharia compliant on an annual basis, and that needs to be disclosed to the investors.
Kemal Bey, shukran. I think you love Oman, after. But as far as I know, Oman is a lovable,
But Dr. Fatin loves nasi lemak.
Well, let us say that your second nationality is Omani and mine is second nationality is
Let's continue Dubai again. Mohammed Rushdie Bey. By the way, Farooq Bey, you completed your speech, or you want to add something?
No, I think that that is quite interesting discussion, and I would like to take it further.
Shukran, welcome. So, Mohammed Rushdie Bey.
I think I need to add something to Brother Farooq. He put a question which is nice, about to see other jurisdiction which is a bit active in Islamic finance. I want to ask him because I could see recently some good activity in the CIS region as well. I think there is another bank or called Iman, I think, and even there is Taib also is operating from the CIS region, I believe. So do you believe that there is more activity happening there? And just like it's for discussion, because I believe there is this is one of the areas or jurisdiction or the parts which I believe there is some activities happening in Islamic Fintech over there nowadays, which is CIS region.
I think that if you look at even in Germany, for example, Insha Bank is a very good example of an Islamic digital bank. And but if you look at the whole region, I would say Central Asian countries are very promising at the moment as a whole region. And whatever activity is going on, even like in different aspects of fintech, for example, like it's not only about banks, but also about crypto. It's also about having crowdfunding platforms and other services. So it's a very booming market at the moment. And then we also have, you have mentioned about Tayyib and also Iman. And then we also have like Kestrel, Rizq. So these are basically very promising developments at the moment. And some I would also tell you that some of the decentralized financial products are also getting very popularity among the people who are crypto savvy, and they love blockchain, for example. So for them, I think that we will be having some like crypto mega banks or it will be a very fascinating to see a spin-off of an Islamic crypto mega bank, for example.
Okay.
So that is something which is like forward-looking, and I would be very much excited if we see this in any of the jurisdiction.
Okay, you mean something will be around DeFi, the decentralized finance, right?
Yeah, so it's decentralized finance, but you can still have a banking solution through on a decentralized network.
Okay.
And all your products and services would be offered to the customer in a decentralized fashion. But by the way, again, people are still thinking that it is unregulated area, but now sooner or later it will be regulated also. So then it will have more confidence from the consumer side and from the regulator side also. So from my experience, what I have seen is that this area is basically now has been a focus of the regulators, and when it is being regulated, and I hope that like it will be regulated in a positive and constructive way. But the good side, the upside of this is that like people will have more confidence and access towards these products and services.
Okay, we hope inshallah soon inshallah. Thank you. No, from Dubai, brother Mustafa Bey or UAE, I think the development in fintech sector is going great. There is no differentiation between fintech, Islamic or none, because, as I said, the centers of fintechs, either ADGM, either DIFC or Fintech Hive, and so on, they promote all types of fintech. Even yesterday was in a presentation by the strategy guys from DIFC. Of course, they call it Islamic Tech now, which is a good thing, and first time to see the word Islamic Tech, not Islamic Fintech. So I think they have there's some attention to the sector, but the same accelerators and all, they give attention to all, and people which they have the ideas for Islamic Fintech or Islamic banking or Islamic finance, they are able to work out here. And I think even the crowdfunding platform which we're having here in UAE, they operate both conventional and Islamic, and I think the hybrid model is prevailing here. Except, of course, I think there's some which would be only Islamic, like some of the digital banks and so on. So the development here in UAE, I think, is going promising, and could see other parts of the world as well from a fintech point of view. Here in the Middle East is really, lots of money has been also put in fintechs. You can see it every day today, like you see, there is some money putting in one of the companies. So I think soon we'll hopefully we'll see much more Islamic fintech companies, in the region here. I have a report. Hopefully, you will see it soon with Arab Monetary Fund. It was me with Dr. Abdeen from Malaysia. We are talking about the Islamic fintech landscape. So it's a small report, but we identified 3 hubs. One is GCC or Middle East, which is in Dubai. All of these areas, Bahrain and so on. Another, Oman, in all the GCC countries. And another hub was UK for Europe, and another hub which is Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and all. So this is the 3 hubs we could see for Islamic fintech, and development is happening around it. Maybe we can add more. As I said, the CIS region, there is some activities happening over there.
Thank you, Shukran Mohammed Bey. As first session and first session speakers, we are on to close the say about closing remarks. I would like to hear your closing remarks, Fatin Hanım, from you. What do you think as your opinion, Islamic fintech in the region?
Certainly. Islamic fintech, combined with the powers of green finance, can unlock a lot of potential and allow a lot of opportunities. In terms of mobilization of capital, it will enable firms to connect with the financial institutions and investors to access wider pool of finance, monitor commitment, deploying technology to collect trusted quality, measure impact. Of course, it's very important, specifically when we're talking about the carbon footprint and also understanding the ecosystem development, ESG capabilities and innovations. Green marketplace. I mean, now it is significant to understand the venture capital and green project sponsors. Green print data platform, this is very important to understand the ESG ecosystem and the support to the SDGs. So if I would like to say regarding Islamic green fintech developments, it really mobilizes all of those aspects. So first, mobilize capital, monitor commitment, measure impact, ecosystem development, green marketplace, and green print data platform. I think I'll give it for the rest of my colleagues to complete the closing remarks.
Welcome, Fatina. Shukran. Thank you for your valuable contribution. Kemal Bey.
I don't have much to say except that I think for Oman, there are exciting times to come in Oman. It's actually growing rapidly. In terms of Islamic finance, and Dr. Fatin has actually rightly put it, correctly. We are coming out with, in terms of the SDG, SRI framework. People are actually interested. We have the crowdfunding, which actually caters for both conventional and Islamic. We have a lot of interest. We've actually made it flexible, and I think for those who have actually dealt with some of the, either both the authorities here in Oman, we have been very flexible in order wanting to actually in a way to catch up, but at the same time to enable innovation in the country itself. And we would most certainly welcome players like, for example, from Dubai, Mohammed or Farouk, Dr. Farouk, those who are actually interested, come and explore and see what we have to offer here, in terms of both on the fintech, on the SDG side, and also on the crowdfunding platforms. And I think it's something that they may be interested in wanting to explore more in Oman itself.
Brother, I need just to add, because you talk about it, Anita, I'm very proud that I launched the first Islamic bank in Oman, Bank in Izwa. I was part of the team which is set up the bank, and a few days back I was looking at my data here on my laptop, and I found the license of the bank. I was the first one to receive it from Central Bank of Oman, and then I talked to the CEO and everybody. So it's a proud moment, to see the first license of the first Islamic bank in Oman, and we're very proud, and really would be great, inshallah, to visit again and see with collaboration, inshallah, with all of you.
Then we can do something on the fintech area, Brother Muhammad.
yeah, definitely. And as well, just let me add again, I think before the Islamic banking started in Oman, the first seminar or a workshop happened in Oman. It was a year before or 2 years before. I was invited as a speaker there with a company called ITS, which is an IT company. And I was there, it was really something great. So Alhamdulillah, with the Islamic banking in Oman, I was attached from even before, from initially, even with the setup. So really, there is a great opportunity over there. And inshallah, hope we talk, inshallah, we find ways to collaborate, inshallah, in Oman, inshallah.
So Oman win at the beginning of our speech. I asked that Oman versus Dubai. Now it seems Oman on the way of winning.
All winners.
MashaAllah. So they are all winners. You are right, Mr.
Okay, last conclusion remarks. We would like to hear from Farouk Bey.
Thank you so much, Brother Kamal. I think that we are looking forward to it once when the situation is normalized. Definitely we will come, and even then, we do not have to come, but then we are closely looking at the progress that the Oman has already made. Last time I was also in Oman on the invitation of Central Bank of Oman. I had the privilege to meet Dr. Fatin. But anyway, as a closing remarks, I would just like to summarize what I have been trying to say is that we have many approaches towards finance, which is better. For example, I would like to say approaches towards good finance. There is a side of bad finance or evil finance, but basically we have so many approaches of good finance. For example, green finance, SRI, ESG. So these are all types of approaches towards good finance, and Islamic finance is all encompassing and very comprehensive. So by default, it's already a good finance, Islamic finance. Now, what we would like to see is that how technology can facilitate us in achieving greater maqasid al-Sharia and also the greater objectives of Islamic finance, in the sense that we can actually see at the implementation level that it is basically better for the society, be it an Islamic society or a non-Islamic society. So in that sense, I think that we can really make a difference through technology, because I believe that Islamic Fintech is something which is a combination of different powers, different strengths, because it has efficiency, it has technology advancement on one side, and on the other side, it has ethical appeal, which is Islamic. So it's all about good finance there. So I think that we can merge these two strengths together and can come up with a solution which is better for the whole society and for our children, for our grandchildren, and forever, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Farooq Bey. So now new speakers welcome from Jordan, from Palestine, from Nigeria. We are going to from Kuwait. We are going to speak with them. Thank you for your valuable contributions. All see you. Masalama again.
Okay.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Most welcome. So now, as we are continue as our second session with the speakers, Hani Bey, Mohammed Khatib Bey, and Idris Bey, Safa Hanım, Safa Nassar Reldin from Jerusalem, and the picture is behind of her is very nice. That as loving Jerusalem, and many respect to Jerusalem as well. And then Amin Mustafa, we would like to see Dr. Amin Bey, Mustafa Bey from Nigeria. Now, we would like to continue about Islamic Fintech, Islamic Finance, Green Finance, and we would like to hear, Hani Bey, welcome. We would like to hear from you this perspective, as you a little saw that here that our first session speakers, that what would you like to add? And also your speak, we would like to hear.
Thank you very much. I'm not probably the right one to start with something really very specific related to Islamic financing and green financing. Based on my capacity, I would like to say, that we, in general, the Muslims are something more than probably 24% of the population. I believe in the meantime, I demonstrate two experiences as it relates to, Islamic Fintech and green financing in Jordan and Iraq by both central bank of the both parties. Specifically, it was dedicated to renewable energy and mainly solar, okay, which was a very well-defined program where the central bank have a sort of fund dedicated for the banks in Iraq. And by the way, number of Islamic banks in Iraq exceeds 25% of banks operating in Iraq are with Islamic license. And I find that most of them are very interested to really capitalize on this technology, the fintech of renewable energy, as it relates to, solar, okay, where the central bank is giving, very attractive and very, incentives, very high incentives, and very encouragement to banks to start, financing individuals, not only institutions, Iraqis as individuals, and also institutions, encourage them to really use renewable energy. Now, as it relates from the Islamic point of view, definitely we know we are in Sharia is the moral code of Islamic law, And from Quran, I'm not, expert to, translate Quran to English. But in Quran, there is a lot of articles where it talks directly that we as a human are responsible to really be very positive with the environment we are living in. And even your body is going to be asked, your hand, your eye, how you use all these, features that God, grant you in really helping to have a clean, green, and sustainable, environment. The program in Iraq, the central bank will really dedicate a fund, and very aggressive fund, very good amount of fund, and it will really facilitate the banks with from commercial point of view, with a very low interest rate for banks, but for the Islamic process, it is different. The program, I think, will start picking up probably within 2 to 3 months, and there will be a sort of more details about this. Is a sort of start, talking about this function.
Thank you, Hani Bey. Most welcome as entrance speech. Let's continue with Muhammed Katip Bey. Muhammed Katip Bey or Safa Hanım, whoever who is more close to speech, welcome yani.
Definitely, Dr. Safa. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dr. Muhammad, go ahead.
Ladies first, go ahead.
Ladies first.
Experts first. No problem, so please go ahead.
Okay, first of all, it's great to be here again and to see those wonderful faces of dear friends all over the world and close by. And one thing I like about these sessions is actually the ability to see my friends, because these days I'm so busy I can't even breathe, but I get those sessions and I get to see everybody. So this is great stuff. The subject is dear to my heart, and I'm going to be a little bit vocal about it. When we talk about sustainable finance, we talk about green finance. To me, Islamic finance has always been sustainable finance and green finance. And when we started, or when Islamic finance started and they developed all the products, it actually had the essence of a sustainable finance. If we talk about sustainable finance, we're talking about environmental, social, and governance criteria that govern the finance. And this is, of course, what is called ESG. So if we look at taking care of our environment, taking our social, how people interact in the business, the relationship with the suppliers, the relationship with the customers, how the partners work together, it is amazingly how it's governed in the Islamic finance. And then, of course, the governance itself, how you run your business, how your leadership treats your employees, the executives, the pay, no fraud, nothing immoral, let's say, happening, is of course, that governs the criteria of governance. If you look at Islamic finance, the characteristic of Islamic finance is very simple. It is an asset-backed, and this is the amazing thing about it. You cannot buy financial papers, and you cannot make business out of selling papers around. It has to have an asset or a service backed. This asset backed actually contribute to the social part, because you do not have the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, if you actually always selling and buying products that actually physical or a service. What happened in 2008, 2009 in the financial crisis is they were selling financial assets, and then everybody who's buying the financial assets adding their markup on it and selling it again and selling it again. at one point, the financial market was 70 times the physical market that we live in, or the physical economy, which is crazy because the financial system was supposed to be created to support the real economy, not to be 70 times the real economy, and becomes the financial economy is the actual economy and the real economy is the supported. So it's very strange. So when you look at the asset back, it's very important in Islamic finance, and it's actually very important in characterizing Islamic finance as a social finance. Then you look at the ethical part of Islamic finance. Islamic finance is very ethical. And if it's ethical, you cannot really do anything wrong to the environment, to the social, to the people, or to the in the governance. So if you look at the ESG, all of them, the E and the S and G actually are in the ethical part of Islamic finance. Then we have the risk sharing in Islamic finance, another characteristic of an important characteristic of Islamic finance. And this is allow you to do business in a risk sharing and partnership, and you stay away from the riba, you stay away from basically overcharging people and all the problems and the diseases that actually caused socially by the riba. And then we have the good governance, which is Islamic finance is built on good governance with the Sharia board and the Sharia board on the bank level, on the country level, etc. It's actually more governing the Islamic finance than any other finance. A lot of eyes are looking at these products and ensuring that they actually do good to the society. That's why good governance is built into Islamic finance. So these characteristics mean Islamic finance is well-suited alignment of the SDG. And basically, you cannot really, and that's why when they say Islamic finance and green finance and sustainable finance, and I think I had that discussion with Brother Hani. I told him, to me, Islamic finance is green finance. It's a social finance. The issue here is we got to the point of imitating so many conventional products in Islamic finance that we lost the soul of Islamic finance, that now we have to differentiate and say, no, Islamic finance supports green finance. To me, Islamic finance is green finance if we knew the spirit of Islamic finance and actually executed on it. Of course, with the digital revolution and all the technologies that came, which is my specialty, I was a technologist, you actually have the ability to combine the digital finance, talking about the great technologies of the cloud, the mobile, the AI, the big data, the blockchain, Internet of Things, etc. And you can combine all those amazing technologies with Islamic finance and deliver it to achieve amazing things. And when we talk about the digital finance, and I mean, if you notice, we're talking about what sustainable finance is. We're talking about what Islamic finance is, which is definitely sustainable finance. Now we're talking about the digital revolution that allow us to take the sustainable and the Islamic finance to a completely different level by dematerialization, demonetization, and democratization of the financial services. And we talked in previous sessions a lot about how you democratize the service, how you demonetize, and how you dematerialize all these services that we have. And all this, of course, giving a tremendous empowerment to the individuals. So what are, I have a phrase I used in previous presentations. I call it Sustainable Islamic Digital Finance, which is SIDF. And if you what I did is actually I took the sustainability of Islamic finance, and combined it with the digital and said, okay, what are the possibilities that SIDF can actually allow us to do? By combining them, we actually achieve an amazing world of potential. When we can do things and solve problems, the world can actually have the tools to solve very, very serious problems. And we can see it happening in a lot of Islamic countries. We can see it happening in, I think, Brother Muhammad Rushdi talked about, the different regions where Islamic finance and fintechs are happening. We have the Southeast Asia, driven by what's happening in Malaysia and Indonesia, the GCC, and what's happening in even the Europeans trying to jump on that bandwagon, and considering London is one of the hubs for Islamic finance, which is amazing. So one of the biggest possibilities is the financial inclusion. When you look at the Islamic world, we have about 85% of the Islamic world actually below poverty lines. And it's sad to say, but we have a very, very poor countries in the Islamic world. And those people are not included in the current financial world, and they're not included in the financial services, is not reaching them, etc., etc. We have amazing tools in Islamic finance, like zakat, like waqf, like other things that actually can help those people, but there's always these doubts and the distrusts. And how is my money getting to the right people? Am I giving it in the right channels? And then you always label Islamic finance with the word terrorism support and etc. Now transferring money to certain countries is like a nightmare. It's very, very hard to transfer money to certain Islamic countries without getting asked a million questions. So the financial inclusion is possible if we deploy the technology that we're talking on, and we can actually bring it to these financial services. So we can actually override these challenges that we're having there. I think there are some geopolitical challenges will continue to exist, but our ability to use and deploy the technology in fintechs and other than fintechs will allow us to actually achieve larger financial inclusion and reach that huge poverty levels in all our Muslim country, and actually lift up the people out of that of these poverty levels. In general, there's a lot of possibilities. I can talk about them in a later session. I don't want to just continue, but it's very important to mention that there is SDGs put by the United Nations. I think there is 17 of them. And when I look at the 17 SDGs set by the United Nations, almost 10 of them or more are actually directly an impact. Islamic finance impact these SDG and address them directly. If you talk about the poverty, the zero hunger, the quality in education, the gender equality, etc., 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 a lot of Islamic finance initiatives can actually address these. And then you have a few that if not directly impacted by the Islamic finance, there are indirectly actually are addressed by the Islamic finance. I don't want to hog the whole time, but this is really my thoughts on the subject, and I can talk more about it later. Thank you.
Most welcome, Mohammed Bey. Let's continue with Jerusalem. Welcome, Jerusalem, and Dr. Safa Hanım. We would like to hear from you.
Assalamu alaikum from Jerusalem, Al-Quds, as Mustafa Bey says. It is my great pleasure to participate in these very informative sessions. Always we are exchanging very important ideas, and as I always say, I hope we can work more together, at least for the awareness for people to take all these new technologies and new ideas further in their countries and make use of these very important topics. If you go back to our subject, the Islamic finance and the green finance, they both fundamentally share the fundamental principle of risk sharing and sustainability. So green finance is for risk sharing, and also Islamic finance is based on risk sharing and sustainability. And as Brother Muhammad said, and the other session also said, they are all based on green finance especially plays an important role in delivering the several sustainable development goals, as well as the Islamic finance. And there are lots of initiative working with the private and public sectors in order to align the international financial systems to these sustainable goals. Most of the green finance projects are like energy, renewable energy, energy efficiency, pollution prevention, biodiversity, sustainable use of natural resources. All these projects have one goal for sustainable development, and all of them we can use the Islamic finance to fund them also. So Islamic finance, not only the idea behind how what is the difference between finance and Islamic finance, also we can use the Islamic finance to fund these projects. So these projects, one common green finance tool used all around the world is the green bonds that are used by mostly by the US, by China, and by France. So they have some principles of the sukuk, for example, that can be used from the Islamic finance. So green financing will also increase the financial flows from the banking, the microfinancing, the investment from the public, the private, and the non-profit sectors to sustainable development projects or priorities. And I think we share that with the Islamic, exactly with the Islamic finance and its objectives as a whole. So, and we see that Islamic finance is growing rapidly. There is about more than 2 trillion US dollars working in US in Islamic finance that are totally Sharia compliant. So I'm sure that both can work together, or they are really complementary to each other if we want to finance the sustainable projects to lead to sustainable goals using Islamic Fintech Sharia compliant services. We will be also doing what the other people that are not using the Islamic finance, using other finance system are using. We will be all together achieving to one goal. Here I can stop and we can talk more later.
Most welcome, Shukran. Thank you, Safa Hanım. We can continue to Nigeria. We can go Nigeria a little. We would like to hear from Africa region. And Nigeria is a kind of in the middle of Africa, as if we can count, and 200 million population is high. And as far as I remember, Mr. Mustafa told me #1 population is Islamic. So we would like to hear from Mr. Mustafa Akin Nasser. Also his PhD degree from Malaysia in SAFE.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here with you guys, especially having the likes of Dr. Safa, Hani Idris, and Mohammed Khatib. I think I've not really had the pleasure of sharing a session with you guys and with you all in a bit, quite a long time. But then I kept following all other sessions. It's been very insightful what I've been sharing. So it's indeed a pleasure. I only had a chance to share a panel with Dr. Safa recently alongside Brother Mustafa Kogu. So thank you all. And I think all the remarks so far have been really, really interesting and insightful, particularly when we talk about when we try to place Islamic finance in its rightful place. Really, Islamic finance in its rightful place should cover sustainable finance, should cover green finance. And technology will just be an enabler for its adoption, especially in this age of information that we are. So by way of introduction, again, I'm Mustafa. I'm speaking to you guys from Nigeria, and precisely from Taj Bank. I'd like to, perhaps if you allow me, Brother Mustafa Kogu, maybe share with you some thoughts. I think it would be rightful to hang my thoughts around numbers. So recently I've been looking at the numbers on Islamic finance and looking at it side by side with Nigeria. So there are two things. If time permits, I can briefly just bring Nigeria to the fore and then go deep into Islamic finance by its numbers to highlight my issue. And there are a lot of them, but I think for the purpose of this discussion, I will touch on an area that I think it's often neglected in discussions as this. And I'm glad to note that there are, amazing or distinguished experienced panelists to share their own perspective on this particular issue that I have. I'll save it for last. It has to do with risk management. So, Brother Mustafa, if I may, I'd like to share my screen just to run through some numbers.
Yes, I granted, Mustafa Bey, but you can continue sharing screen.
Wonderful. I will just take a moment to share. Okay, so please let me know if my screen is visible.
Sure.
Okay, just quickly to run you through, as Mustafa Bey has said, Nigeria itself is at the heart of Africa. And this is Nigeria with over 200 fintech startups. Just to paint a general picture, if I will go a bit, zoom in a bit into Nigeria, from what you can see of my slides, fintech adoption is not so much in scale. It's predominantly in the southwestern part, the green part. From the scale, you can see from low to high. Low are the red areas, the green areas are the high fintech concentration. So fintech is actually concentrated in certain parts of the country. And this is natural because it follows a pattern of digitization, or would I say, ICT adoption. So where you find the large number of mobile phone connections, the large number of internet subscribers and so on, it follows this suit in the Nigerian market. Predominantly, our fintech space is dominated with the payment systems. Most fintechs entrants, they go in, under that payments and then lending. There isn't much of wealth management. There isn't much of, say, other deep personalized finance products, not so much. And yes, women in Nigeria, yes, women are doing well with regards to fintech. We have about 22% of women, female co-owners or co-founders in fintech. I definitely put this on my slide following my discussions with Dr. Fatim, but she is not here. She is a women advocate, but it's good thing that Dr. Safa is here. She can actually pass on the message. In this, there are several imperatives, which I won't want to go deep into that for fintech stakeholders. And these are most of the things that have been shared in this discussion, where we need, regulatory frameworks. We need to create a pool for digital identity. And this actually speaks to the issue that I want to highlight, that has to do with risk, the risk that fintech comes with. Most of the time we talk about the hype, we talk about development finance, DeFi, we talk about blockchain, cryptocurrencies, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and all these interesting and amazing tools and technology. But oftentimes we do not talk about the risk that it presents. And truly, risk in the sense of a long time goal. What are the infrastructure that underlie this technology? Who controls this infrastructure that underlies this technology? What are the privacy issues that might arise when we have a monopolistic control of infrastructure that underlies this technology? And that speaks to the question which I would want to end with later on. If truly we are actually tech savvy or tech slaves? This is a question that Dr. Fatin has posed in our previous conversation. And I will move very quickly, not to talk about Nigeria. I just want to highlight a few points about the Nigerian fintech landscape. But then let's talk about Islamic fintech. This is the crux of our discussion. So far, Islamic fintech has had the report from Global Islamic Fintech to this year, 2021. Fintech actually is currently worth 49 billion. Islamic Fintech. It was $49 billion. Now, it is projected to grow as much as $128 billion in the next 4 years. That is great. This growth is even way ahead of the conventional fintech growth. Fintech conventional grows at an average of 15% cumulative average per year, but Islamic fintech grows at 21%. And how many players do we have? Over 250 players in the market. And this is also good. And they're all spread across 35 countries, across the 6 or 7 continents of the world. We know they are concentrated in one part of the world than the other, mostly concentrated in Asia and the Middle East. But then, who are the top, or where do they thrive the most? The markets that enables their growth. Surprisingly, most of them are in the Muslim majority countries, the likes of Saudi, Iran, United Arab Emirates, and so on and so forth. But when we look at this, we also ask ourselves again, which areas do they operate? Predominantly, which aspect? Fintech is a big umbrella, but which aspect, across which verticals do we have them the most? Yes, they present across 12 verticals, talk about payments, data analytics, challenger banking, cryptocurrency, alternative finance, crowdfunding, takaful, peer-to-peer lending, and so on. However, the top 5 fintech market are in the alternative finance, which actually makes sense for Islamic finance value proposition, because the Islamic finance value proposition find it hard to get a place in mainstream finance. Now, when fintech came about, it served as a tool to dish it out and spread its adoption. That is why you see, say, people that want to come up with a mudaraba lending or mudaraba financing system, for instance, and find it hard to obtain a banking license, all they need to do is to set up a fintech platform that allows people to come in. And same approach applies to the crowdfunding models. Same applies to payment system that eliminates the element of riba. And you have a fee-based payment system that doesn't involve interest. So does remittances. And the rest are also lagging, but it shows that, okay, there's a need for improvement in areas of takaful. It has only about 4 fintech players in the areas of takaful on a global scale. Now, this is according to the data from IFN Fintech 2021. There will be more, but actually similar is applicable in the global fintech report, not Islamic Fintech this time around. Takaful has the least amount of players compared to the rest. Payment is always leading any day, any time. Then we asked ourselves, if this is the landscape as it is now, what matters for the future? What do we have? What do we have coming? And in this regard, I'm trying to make this presentation very short. We can discuss deeper on it later, but I'll share with us the current landscape, what it's like in terms of Islamic fintech across geography and across verticals. Now, if we have a look, we can see that Southeast Asia and the MENA region, as I mentioned, are the most developed fintech market within the Islamic fintech universe. And from what we can see, there's a huge number when it comes to payments in both Southeast Asia and the MENA region. We then move that, comparing that to Africa at the far right. The red is the low, while green is high. We can see that there's a dearth, there's a need for more fintech players in these areas. This is just to highlight the gaps and also showcase the opportunity that it comes with. There's a need for more activities in these areas. Now, while these gaps and opportunity exist and they come in their enormous quantity, this graph, I believe, speaks for itself. So are the risks that the fintech comes with. The advent of digital technology, I'd say, comes with both opportunity for innovation, but also presents risk. If we were to look at some of this risk, which I will just highlight a few of them here. Starting from the first, Islamic Fintech, Sharia non-compliance risk. This is often not discussed because a fintech has a Sharia board or a fintech has an Islamic name, or because a fintech says, oh, it provides an alternative to conventional. That doesn't mean that it doesn't, is not prone to this sort of risk. And the moment you have this risk, then it's a problem because it brings about reputational damage. It opens you up to litigations, and that comes with its own, legal consequences. It has, it sends the wrong signal to the public. There's a distrust issue, and then on the other side, there will be also issues of loss of investors' confidence, and a whole lot. And this also opens up to other forms of risk: the strategic risk, regulatory risk, technology, operation, and a whole lot of them. The question now that I have is, with all this that is said, all this that we know about fintech and what we are happy and hopeful for in terms of development, the underlying infrastructure for the financial technology solutions that we have currently, are we sure that itself does not constitute a risk for the growth of fintech in the future? Give you an example. When it comes to global payments, even our Islamic or Islamic fintech, they rely on infrastructures provided by the likes of SWIFT, for instance, for clearing. They rely on infrastructure provided by Amazon or Microsoft Azure. Now, not to say this infrastructure are problematic in of themselves, no. However, these infrastructures, their control and ownership and so on, do not necessarily reside in areas that, or in a way that they are bound by Islamic ethics and so on. We talk about Islamic finance, Islamic fintech based on, ethicals and so on. How are we able, or how are we sure that this risk would not materialize in the near future to mean loss or to hamper the growth of Islamic fintech? It's this area that I hope I can gain with the likes of, from the experience of the distinguished panelists. And with this, I would like to just submit my point and drop my slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mustafa, Dr. Mustafa, for your sharings. You added great details from Nigeria market as along with your speech. Let's start second turn, and Hani Bey, upon all these details and with your all experiences that we would like to hear from you about fintech Islamic market developments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa. It's very informative presentation. Let me, draw the attention that we always link funding and financing by banks. We have to consider there is a good number of financial institutions that they are adopting Sharia law and Islamic law in financing. They are not banks, they are financial institutions, and they are having license from central banks in the region to do. So we have banks and we have also financial institutions that they are, Islamic oriented, and they are financing, individuals, as well as institutions. I believe with what, we have really demonstrated, fintech is a common statement. It's, a terminology that it goes with all type of sectors. I believe that we have also to consider, in addition to a traditional green finance by banks for the funding of individuals as well as the institutions as it relates to green financing and to assure sustainable development of this process. Also to consider other sectors in that domain. Because, I mean, there is a sort of responsibility and, I mean, ethical goals or targets on all the banks and financial institutions in the Islamic domain to consider, I mean, other sectors like agriculture, education, health, etc. Okay, which we, I mean, need also to keep in mind why we are really talking about the green financing. In the meantime, the technology trend is now talking about functionalities beyond the traditional way of doing things. I mean, we talk about artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency. We are now talking about cloud outsourcing. We talk about, I mean, what we call big data. I mean, new operational modules. I mean, to assure proper control and proper, I mean, continuity of the process from the Islamic point of view. Also, in the meantime, that we do have in the Islamic, I mean, financing tools, sukuk, I mean, to fund these type of projects. I mean, green financing. We have the methodology of murabaha. Definitely in Islam, I mean, there is nothing to be considered as interest. I mean, money is, I mean, it has no value by itself. It's a method to define the value of and also, I mean, I will keep in mind what, I mean, Brother Muhammad talk about the human side of the element, because, I mean, a very good number of, I mean, Islamic countries are very, very, very poor countries, very poor countries. And the number of population is huge. To use the zakat, use the waqf, these type of, I mean, Islamic tools in, I mean, giving a fair opportunity to, I mean, support poor people because they don't have any resource of income. In the meantime, I believe we have focused, as I say, on the banks only as the area of financing and fintech merger in this domain. Also, I mean, I insist to consider, because there is good number of financial institutions that they have the license to, I mean, lend money and under the rule and Sharia Islamic law, and mainly this type of SMEs, because this type of, I mean, SMEs can really penetrate the market and fill the gap of not only funding and financing by banks, the big companies, the big institutions. Now they can give the small and medium companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Most welcome, Hadi Bey, for your sharings. Dr. Safa Hanım, we would like to go Jerusalem again at Kudus. Welcome. We would like to hear from you.
Thank you, Mustafa Bey, and I'm so happy to hear you all, and especially Dr. Mustafa from Nigeria, because he keeps going back to women and the women importance and the women presence in ITech. So thank you, Dr. Mustafa. And I will pass the message also to Dr. Fatin, who will be also happy. I'm so happy to hear about Nigeria, really, because all what we have about Nigeria is what's going on, that we get spams from Nigeria. Sorry to say that, but take care from the emails coming from Nigeria. So I really admired once when I was in an international telecom conference. I met the Minister of Telecom of Nigeria, and she is a lady also. She was a lady. I don't know how, if she's still the lady now, but she was a lady. And they spoke about the infrastructure, the fiber cables, the submarine cables, and really they have good infrastructure that can be many projects can be built upon. So, and back again to the green and Islamic finance, there is like a saying that the greener the economy, the better the climate change phenomena is being managed. So this will entail pursuing balanced economic development programs, which coincides with the core principle of Islamic finance that builds upon the concept of maqasid sharia, as we said all earlier. And there are lots of case studies and recent uses of green sukuk that Mr. Hani here, Mr. Hani Idris spoke about in Malaysia and in Indonesia, and they have many successful stories there. So Islamic finance, as we said earlier, can be a catalyst for growth of green developments globally. So in Europe, in America, in Africa, and Asia, they are witnessing many non-sustainable investments on assets and portfolios that are like making bad for the climate change effects. They have a bad effect, I mean, on the climate change. So this emerging trends provides greater opportunity for Islamic finance to attract a wider base of investors and its role responding to sustainable objectives of finance. And this will require continuous collaboration with stakeholders to cover all standards and reporting, as well as innovations that are taking place in many countries. And it will also reduce barriers to cost and issuing of the sukuk and the bonds and etc. Because it was known for some time that issuing bonds is expensive, but they are trying to do like some studies to say that no, it's not that expensive that people think about how it's expensive or not expensive. So I think we have lots of things to do and work on so that we can make further changes and developments, especially in the world that use the Islamic finance and so on. And as Mr. Hani Idris said, the technology is a tool. So using the basics of Islamic finance and the green finance together and using the technology as a tool, I'm sure that we will have not only 1%, as Dr. Mustafa said, not only 1% effect on the world. I said there is 2 trillion for the finance, and Islamic finance, he said only about 126 million, I think, a billion, I think. So it's really so little in the world of finance. So we have to make more and more awareness about it, and also overcome some challenges as regulations, because we really miss many regulations related to Islamic finance and Islamic technology related regulations to make it prosper and develop more. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukran, Dr. Safa Hanım, for your speech. And then Mohammed Khatib Bey, we would like to hear from you.
Actually, the whole discussions were great. I really enjoyed all the discussions, and some of the slides that Dr. Mustafa presented are actually, the way he presented are very interesting, because they show some insights that could be very interesting. How, for example, in the GCC, the fintechs are focused, a lot of them focus on raising fund, considering the JCC liquidity issue, versus if you look at the Southeast Asia, it's the other way around, and payment is dominant in that area. I believe, I mean, there are so many topics we can talk about when we talk about Islamic finance and fintechs and etc. But I know we only have like a few minutes left. So I want to talk about the big techs. And I think one of the, Brother Mustafa touched a little bit on using the technology of the platforms, the big platforms like the Microsoft and the Google and the Facebook, etc. But I will talk about it from another perspective. I think Islamic finance has uniqueness is that I'm pretty sure that the big techs, Islamic finance is not on their radar, but the conventional finance is definitely on the radar of the big techs. So when you're talking about Facebook, Google, Apple, I mean, the most popular payment system in UAE, in United Arab Emirates today, is actually Apple Pay. It's not a local payment system or anything like that. And Facebook is getting very, very strongly in that area. I think Google is definitely, it's on their radar. And they're warming up those big techs. And one important thing, when you talk about fintechs, the most important word is trusts. Why fintechs sometimes struggle in our regions is the trust factor. Basically, this is what keeps actually the power with the banks. The banks have the trust and they earned it over the years. So if you have your life savings, you do not take your life savings and put it in a fintech, not yet. And it could happen, but not yet. Even with the new banks, they're struggling with this trust issue. The problem is those big techs do have the trust because you are trusting those big techs with your most private data. If you look at what you put on your emails on Google and Gmail, if we see what you share on some of these platforms, if you are buying something from Amazon.com, you really don't hesitate to put your credit card information on Amazon.com. But if you go to a local network and you try to put your credit card information, you hesitate and you're like, oh, I wonder if I should put it or not. So the trust is there, and that's what I believe we have to watch for. For the conventional finance, those big techs, when they move to the local markets, they will move in power. And I think India allowed, for example, WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook, WhatsApp network to do WhatsApp payments. And now they're having a lot of issues of what is WhatsApp doing with the data, and the government is going back and forth with Facebook and trying to figure out exactly how is this working. The Islamic finance, we really are not on radar of big data. So all the fintechs has this advantage that whatever the Islamic fintechs do, if they can develop the trust, and if they can gain that trust from the people, they can actually develop services to compete with the Apple Pay and to compete with those conventional big techs. I think the local financial services may get squeezed with those big techs, but I really do believe Islamic finance has advantage if they can capitalize on that advantage and develop that trust. Today, my evaluation of the Islamic finance, even with the slides that Brother Mustafa shared, and I think Dr. Safa mentioned, the percentage is very, very small when you talk about Islamic finance. But actually, it is representative of what Islamic finance as a whole for the conventional finance. So if you look at the Islamic finance, it's about 2%, 2.5% of the total global conventional finance, the global finance system. And if you look at the Islamic fintechs, that are around there in our region, 1.5 to 2%. Brother Mustafa wants to say something, I think. Okay, so I really do believe it's representative. We do need to push ahead with Islamic finance. I've been saying this for 10 years, even before the fintechs. We were talking about Islamic finance. I think we're not as good in differentiating Islamic finance still. We're not educating people enough. We're not penetrating enough. Some countries are doing much better job than others, but I think we still have a long way to go and a lot of hard work to actually gain some momentum in that area. That's really my closing remarks.
Most welcome, Khatib Bey. Shukran for your sharings as well. And then go back again to the Nigeria, and many good news, comments also from Nigeria. upon Dr. Mustafa presentation. And after that, we will do all presentation. Yeah, we became a little good. Yeah, we like this presentation. People like presentations. Mr. Mustafa, we would like to hear from you, including closing remarks as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you again for the opportunity to chip in. And I think what have been said so far has been quite interesting. While I agree with Mr. Khatib that we have in Islamic finance as a whole represent a tiny segment of the global financial sector of the mainstream finance, and so does the Islamic Fintech. I think in that case, we're looking at it from the supply side, and it's great. It's an appropriate measure. However, it will be inadequate if we also do not look at it from the demand side. We're looking at a market of over 1.9 billion people, Muslim population across the globe, that use both conventional or both the mainstream finance and then the Islamic finance, be it fintech or otherwise. They consume this product, they consume these services. Now, in their interactions with this comes risk. That's the part that I'm coming from. And I will just leave this discussion there and keep it short, hopefully. Some other day we can specifically go deep into this. The area that I haven't really touched on is on the green finance, which actually, as rightly said, it's interesting that it's an area that is now gaining traction and growing in interest. But that shouldn't be the case. It should have been so from the get-go. Not until the 17 SDGs come about that we have nations, have policymakers, and everyone trying to align themselves on the next good thing. It should be so regardless of the situation. So with Islamic finance, as rightly said by everyone, is inherently green. I mean, it's all about financing products that do not harm the environment. At the bank where I work, and I'm actually working on digital transformation, helping with the digital transformation process. At the same time, I'm on the risk management and product development side of the bank. No financing goes out, for instance, without we checking on the incidental effect, direct or indirect, of this financing on the economy, as well as on the ecology, as well as on the people, for instance. And as an ethical bank, we will not let our own activity bring about a shortfall in the system, either from the economic perspective, from the social perspective, as well as the governance perspective. All three ESG that matters for sustainability. So what are the typical projects that I think would make sense, just to put it, going forward? The World Economic Forum, I think they couch this quite well. It has to do with, yes, shift from energy to renewable energy and energy efficiency. And this is interesting. In the previous discussion, Brother Mustafa Kogo highlighted a case of Bitcoin process, even though we're talking about innovation that leads to consumption of energy, and that brings about the depletion of the ozone layer and so on. And that's actually because of the algorithm, the proof of work algorithm that comes with it. There are several other proofs with which you can solve cryptographic problems, and you can actually use that to validate your earnings on the cryptocurrency world. There are alternatives. So moving to that, pollution and prevention control is another one. Biodiversity and conservation is another consideration. Circular economy as a whole, putting that, even that word suffices for everything that we have to say. And I think the last one has to do with sustainable use of natural resource. But all these points, I think, for us to go deeper into later, but it suffices for this discussion that we appreciate the need to push more for this green financing. However, we also have to acknowledge that Islamic finance, Islamic fintech, should be inherently green. So whatever practices that we have in our process as an Islamic fintech or as an Islamic finance body, it has to tick or check all the boxes of sustainability and all these boxes of being green in the sense of protecting the planet and while making profit. And this is where I'd like to just couch my conversation, my own part of the discourse, and hopefully some other time in the near future, we can go deeper on different aspects of this discussion. It's a lot to unpack. We really cannot finish it all at once, but thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a pleasure.
Most welcome. Thank you. Many salam to Nigeria. Mustafa, Dr. Mustafa, this valuable presentation and contribution of you. Hani Bey, we would like to hear your closing remarks. Şöyle now, just exact time 5, but we are extending with closing remarks. We would like to hear from you.
Okay. Islamic banking is a system by itself, and it's a fact. In the meantime, I mean, technology, as we say, and fintech is, I mean, enabled and available for everybody. I believe that we and Islamic banks and financial institutions in the domain of the green financing are equipped. We have the tools. We have the moral code and ethic to participate in this process, as it's a human responsibility. It is, I mean, what I can say that we must really show that we are in, because we are equipped, we are really having all the ethics to participate and prove that Islamic system is a fact by itself, and it has its own identity all over the world. And the fintech companies, believe me, I mean, Islamic fintech are available, and they are, the majority of them are in USA, in United Kingdom, on the heart of the financial and, I mean, markets in the world. I believe that's what this is my message. We are equipped, we are ready, we do have the ethics, we have the moral really to participate and prove our, I mean, participation and effort in this digitalization era.
Shukran Hani Bey. Thank you. Safa Hanım, we would like to hear from you as closing remarks.
Yes, again, I would like to thank you for this informative session with the participation of my colleagues here, Mr. Hani, Mr. Muhammad, and Dr. Mustafa, and yourself, Mustafa, brother Mustafa. And I want to emphasize the critical challenges that we are facing for Islamic finance as well as for green finance, is the leadership, the awareness to investors, as well as the regulatory framework. I think if we have these three factors solved, it will be much easier to carry on projects that have, as we said, shared objectives of the green finance and the Islamic finance that are composed of risk sharing and also sustainable to the environment and leading, helping the climate change in order to do the developments that the people need. So the right procedures, the right regulations will make it further happen. And I hope we will have further discussion in what, as once we did with Dr. Mustafa, what could we do as the Muslim world in that, having the infrastructure in the hands of the Muslim people for the Islamic finance, not having it, because most of even the Islamic banks are owned by non-Islamic people. So I think we have to speak about this issue also further. They all laughed here. I think I clicked on some point, so I hope I didn't. I wasn't not that diplomatic. So so thank you again for inviting me to participate, and looking forward for our next session for the kind people, as you call them, the knowledge, the innovative, and the digital people, as well as the faster community. I couldn't, you are always inventing very good things. You are always innovative and creative, Mustafa Bey. So thank you again. And you are really helping us to develop our own knowledge with your sessions. Thank you again.
Most welcome, and thank you for your kind words. Safa Hanım, many salam to Jerusalem al Qudus. So Mohammed Bey, as last closing remarks speaker, we would like to hear about all session, and in the name of pastor community, you are one of the supporter, and also thank you in privately now. Any new member come to group, you are saying welcome message. This is really needs to be special thing, yani. And so for your caring to group, we would like to hear your closing speech of all session in the name of pastor community.
Thank you, Brother Mustafa. I definitely would like to thank all the participants in the first session and the second session. Of course, at this session, Brother Hani Idris, it's always a pleasure to see him and hear him talk. Dr. Mustafa, Dr. Safa, and of course you, Brother Mustafa, you did an amazing job in this session and the previous session and every session, as Dr. Safa said. So thank you for doing that. We definitely, when we participated and supported Faster Community, it was, and I told Brother Mustafa, the reason from the beginning, I support this initiative is because it's based on knowledge sharing and making us discuss important topics and continue to do so. And so far with these sessions, we have been doing so. I hope that we will continue to do this. And on this session, just a final remark. The reason the green and the sustainable finance argument came to existence, it's because of the unethical finance practices in the conventional finance. This is really, I mean, it actually all exploded after the financial crisis, and because of the unethical behaviors of so many banks and the way that they actually put profit ahead of everything, and they're destroying our environment. They don't care about governance. They don't care about the social. All what they care about is profits. So that's why everybody says green finance, sustainable finance versus regular finance. Let's not let them drive that argument to Islamic finance. I do not want to hear, and I don't like to say Islamic finance versus green and sustainable finance, because our Islamic finance in its soul and spirit is green and it is sustainable and it supports it. And I talked in my initial discussion, I mentioned how almost every of the 17 sustainable criteria that set by the UN are actually directly related or indirectly, a couple of them are indirectly related to Islamic finance. So our finance, Islamic finance, is actually sustainable and green. That's really what I'd like to leave everybody with. And thank you, everybody, again. And thank you, Brother Mustafa.
Thank you all, and see you our next event, following events we will do with this great contributors as well. You can trace us from our next following events and register there easily. digitaltechnopark.com. We are şuaya forming digital technopark, yani no wall, no stone, no building, ecologic, digital ecologic, let's say, digitaltechnopark.com. See you all. Thank you for your all valuable contributions. See you, masalama. See you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.